King Charles has sent a letter to Prince William, and it's not just emotional, it's explosive. Titled My Final Confession, the message opens with 7 words that stopped the palace cold. William, you must understand. I had no choice. What follows is a truth buried since Diana's death. A war between love, loyalty, and the crown itself. Why did Charles wait this long to speak? What secret does this letter reveal? And how is William reacting now that everything he thought he knew may be a lie? Stay to the end. This changes everything. The letter that shook the crown. The envelope was unmarked, but its weight was unmistakable. It arrived in the late hours, delivered by hand, not aid. No fanfare, no warning, only a royal seal pressed deep into aged wax, and a single line handwritten on the front. My final confession. Prince William didn't open it right away. He stared at it, feeling something in his chest tighten. When he finally broke the seal, the very first line changed everything. William, you must understand. I had no choice. The handwriting was familiar, his father's, but the tone wasn't commanding or political. It was broken, almost apologetic. What followed was a confession so personal, so unexpected, that even senior aides who were later briefed on its contents were left reeling. King Charles, facing ongoing health struggles and a turbulent reign, had decided to put words to secrets long buried beneath the surface of royal life. Not just personal regrets, but institutional ones. And with every page, the foundation beneath the monarchy shook just a little more. The letter traced back to the days after Diana's death, and decisions made in grief, in fear, and under pressure from a system more concerned with survival than with truth. I tried to protect the monarchy, Charles wrote, and I lost your mother in the process. This wasn't a PR-crafted note. It was the voice of a man who had carried silence for too long. A man who, perhaps for the first time, realized that truth, not tradition, might be the only thing left to give. And for William, the man raised to inherit it all, this letter didn't offer answers. It opened wounds. But the most devastating words weren't about power. They were about love. And the war, Charles claimed, tore him apart, not just as a king, but as a husband and a father. Diana Camilla and the war inside the palace. In the pages that followed, Charles didn't defend himself. He exposed himself. Your mother and I were at war with the institution, he wrote. Not with each other, not with Camilla, not even with the tabloids, but with the crown itself, that silent, unflinching machine that demands order, perfection, and sacrifice at any cost. And what the world had never understood, Charles now admitted with raw honesty. The war wasn't between a prince and a princess. It was between two people trying to love, and a system that never made space for it. He revealed the deep loneliness of his early marriage to Diana, the staged photos, the rehearsed smiles, the endless pressure to be two things at once, devoted husband and dutiful heir, while secretly being neither in the way he had hoped. Yes, I loved her, he wrote, but not in the way she needed, and not in the way they needed me to. He didn't excuse his affair with Camilla, but he reframed it. He described it not as betrayal, but as desperation, a search for comfort in a world where every emotion was filed, timed, and signed off on. Then came the confession that would ripple through every corridor of Buckingham Palace. Charles revealed that his eventual marriage to Camilla wasn't just about love, it was about politics, strategy, stability. The monarchy, still limping from Diana's global impact and the public's growing anger, needed a fix, something that looked like redemption. "It was presented to me as the only way forward," he admitted. "They said I could not grieve her and lead them." And so, a deal was made. He described long private meetings with senior aides, conversations filled with calculation, not compassion. Camilla, once the woman they urged him to erase, was now the woman they wanted him to marry, because she made him manageable, because she wasn't Diana. But the cost? Unspoken. Until now. Charles shared moments few had ever heard about. Nights when he pleaded with senior advisors to intervene on Diana's behalf, to shield her from press assaults, to push back against false narratives, to simply let her rest. "I was told to say nothing," he wrote, "to stay composed, to trust the process." And when Diana died, the grief didn't bring the family together. It widened the rift. "They mourned the monarchy's image," Charles confessed. "I mourned the only woman who ever truly challenged it." William read it, slowly, carefully, as if the weight of every word threatened to undo everything he thought he knew. It wasn't just about what Charles had done, it was about what he hadn't done. The silence, the complicity, the slow unraveling of a woman he once called his partner. But it was the next line, short, cryptic, and chilling, that would spark chaos behind palace walls. The bloodline was never in question, but it was never simple either. A sentence that turned whispers into panic. A sentence that made every royal advisor in the room stop breathing for a moment. What was Charles really saying? Was this about lineage, or was it about legacy? Either way, it was the kind of truth that couldn't be buried, and it led William straight into a deeper, darker question. Was his role in the royal family built on something far more fragile than anyone ever admitted? The line that changed everything. It was a single sentence buried in the middle of a paragraph, not circled, not bolded, but unmistakably cryptic. The bloodline was never in question, but it was never simple either. That line has since sparked chaos inside palace walls and raised questions far beyond them. What did Charles mean? Some insiders believe it's metaphor, a reference to fractured loyalty, or perhaps the emotional complexity of his son's upbringing. But others aren't so sure. Because for decades, quiet rumors have swirled through aristocratic halls. Whispers about Charles's past, Diana's heartbreak, and the institution's obsession with image above all. Could this line be alluding to something deeper, even darker? Not just about who fathered whom, but about what truly makes a royal heir. Is it blood? Is it duty? Or is it survival? One former courtier, speaking under anonymity, said, "The palace has always buried bloodlines in protocol. If Charles meant something more here, it changes succession, not just sentiment." And that possibility terrifies them. William, by all public standards, is the rightful heir. But if the line was meant literally, if the bloodline truly wasn't simple, then questions about legitimacy, inheritance, and even William's role take on a whole new meaning. Is it doubt? Is it confession? Or is it a father trying to say the truth isn't always clean, but still real? Whatever the intent, the damage is done. William, once steady and certain, now found himself looking in the mirror, wondering if the future he's been shaped for was built on truth, or a carefully managed illusion. And the world, once again, looked toward the prince for reaction. But what they saw wasn't rage. It was something far more human. A prince in turmoil. Since the moment William read the letter, those closest to him say he hasn't been the same. His appearance hasn't changed. His clothes remain tailored, his speeches on point. But his presence, that quiet confidence that once defined him, has started to unravel at the edges. Body language experts have noticed the shift. Clenched jaws, shallow breathing, eyes that scan the room but never settle. He's been described as distracted, detached, even haunted. Aides report canceled private briefings, missed phone calls, moments where William enters a room only to excuse himself minutes later, saying simply, "Not today." He's not grieving the death of his father. He's grieving the truth about the man he thought his father was. The revelation didn't bring him closure. It brought a storm. Because now, he's trapped in a space between two versions of his life. What he believed and what actually happened. Is his role still valid? Was it ever fully honest? And more painfully, was Diana right about everything? Kate, insiders say, has been his anchor. But even she seems unsure how deep this letter has cut. One source described their recent dynamic as quiet support but distance, like they're holding something heavy together but not speaking it aloud. The palace has remained silent, but the walls have ears. And within those walls, the next question began to form. Why now? Why did Charles choose this moment to finally confess? The answer, it seems, lies in the king himself, and a reign that may be ending far sooner than the world expected. King Charles faces the past. He didn't write the letter in a single night. It came slowly, over months, maybe longer, scribbled in the hours between treatments, in the quiet after speeches, when the throne room fell still and the crown felt heavier than ever. Sources say King Charles had been battling both illness and regret. He feared dying before his truth could be known, not because it would save the monarchy, but because it might save his son from repeating the same mistakes. The weight of Diana's death never left him, nor did the guilt of what he allowed, what he ignored, and what he ultimately chose. "I could not fix the past," he wrote, "but I can hand you its truth." Those closest to Charles say the letter was his final act of spiritual will, not political, not strategic, just human, just honest. The one thing he never fully had the courage to be when the cameras were on. His health, now in visible decline, pushed him to write what he never dared speak. Because the monarchy, despite all its gold and glory, is built on silence. And silence, he feared, was no longer strength. It was rot. Now, as the world watches William carry the letter like a weight he never asked for, attention turns to one more unexpected figure. Not a king, not a prince, but a woman who may have quietly become the future's best hope. Catherine. Catherine's unexpected role in the Queen's secret plan. It wasn't supposed to be her, but it always was, in the Queen's eyes. After Queen Elizabeth's death, royal protocol dictated the release of a series of private letters to be passed to family members. Most were ceremonial, quiet goodbyes, formal thank yous, messages of love and continuity. But one letter wasn't like the others, addressed by hand, delivered by Princess Anne. Not to Charles, not even to William, to Catherine. Sources say Anne handed it to her in person, with no explanation. Just a look, a nod, and a weight Catherine could feel before she even broke the seal. Inside were the Queen's private reflections on the future of the monarchy. Not public speeches, not rehearsed legacies, just truth. "You understand the people better than any of us ever could," the Queen reportedly wrote. "Because you listen, not perform. That is what the crown needs now." It wasn't about titles. It wasn't about blood. It was about trust. Elizabeth had quietly observed Catherine for years. Through scandal, through silence, through crisis after crisis. She had watched her stand beside William without upstaging him, support the family without exploiting them, and protect the children from a world too eager to consume them. Catherine never demanded power, and that's what made her worthy of it. The letter wasn't a legal transfer of authority. It couldn't change laws or titles, but it carried something far more powerful than paperwork. Intent. The Queen saw something coming. She knew the monarchy would be tested in ways her generation never could have imagined. And she believed that when that moment came, it wouldn't be Charles, or even William, who would hold the crown steady. It would be her. But for that to happen, one truth had to come out. And Anne, loyal, dutiful, unreadable Anne, had waited until the exact right moment to deliver it. The night everything inside the palace changed. The night that changed everything. No cameras, no aides, no protocol. Just 3 people in one room: Charles, William, and Anne. It happened in the Blue Drawing Room, a place once used for royal portraits, now cloaked in tension. Anne placed the Queen's letter on the table. No words, just silence. Charles hesitated. William stared. When they read it, everything fell still. The Queen's handwriting was firm, unapologetic. She didn't frame it as advice. She didn't ask permission. She stated what she believed, clearly. "Catherine is the heart of the modern monarchy. Let her lead when you cannot." It hit Charles like a betrayal. The idea that his mother, his own mother, had quietly chosen someone else to guide the future. Reports say he trembled, turning red with frustration. He asked Anne if she agreed. She nodded once and said, "You know she's right." William said nothing, but he didn't need to. His silence was louder than rage, because part of him had always known. Catherine had always been the steady hand, the calming force, the unshakable constant, not just for their children, but for the nation. And now, with the Queen's letter in the open, the path forward was no longer hypothetical. It was personal, political, inevitable. Catherine wasn't just the Princess of Wales anymore. She was the monarchy's lifeline. And that truth would ignite the power struggle no one wanted to admit was already underway. Charles, William, and the power shift. The explosion didn't happen in public, but inside the palace. It was seismic. Charles was furious, not just at the letter, at the implication that his own reign, barely stabilized, was already being prepared to pass him by. That Catherine was not only beloved by the public, but now quietly blessed by the Queen herself. "It's still my crown," he reportedly snapped. "Not hers." William didn't answer. He just looked at his father, not with anger, but with recognition. He understood now. All those years of silence, of sacrifice, of watching the institution break his mother, pressure his brother, and manipulate the narrative. Around every choice they made, it was happening again. Anne remained composed, steady. She told Charles it wasn't about his crown. It was about what would survive after it. And suddenly, the family stood on a fault line. 3 generations of royalty, past, present, and future, realizing they had all become part of a plan that none of them had written. Not one of them saw it coming. But the Queen had. And now, the heir, the sovereign, and the silent sister were all left to reckon with a new reality. Catherine wasn't just in the room, she was at the center of it. And the public, they were already choosing her. The reluctant queen the people already chose. She never asked for the spotlight. She just refused to step out of it when it mattered. For over a decade, Catherine has stood quietly beside William, supporting, shielding, softening the hardest parts of royal life. But now, she's no longer seen as just the consort. She's seen as the constant. In polls, in press, in whispered admiration, Catherine is now being called the most respected royal since the Queen herself. And unlike Diana, who was adored but defiant, Catherine has walked the tightrope with unwavering balance. She has never spoken out of turn, but she has always shown up. And in doing so, she's built a trust the monarchy desperately needs. The Queen saw it. Anne respects it. Even Charles, in his quieter moments, acknowledges it. She wasn't trained for this, one palace insider shared. She became it. It wasn't Catherine's plan to lead. But as the institution wobbles under the weight of old scandals and fading traditions, she may be the only one capable of it. She's the modern face of royal grace, not flashy, not theatrical, just real. And now, with the Queen's letter revealed and Charles still reeling, the palace faces a question it can no longer avoid. Is Catherine already leading? And if so, what does that mean for William? The crown without its shine. A monarchy in crisis. There was a time when the monarchy glowed, gilded, adored, untouchable. That time has passed. Since Queen Elizabeth's death, the cracks have only deepened. Harry's exile, Andrew's disgrace, Charles's complicated history, and now William's silence and Catherine's unexpected rise. For younger generations, the question isn't who's next, it's why does it still exist? In Commonwealth nations, former colonies are demanding independence. In the UK itself, royal relevance is being openly challenged. The pomp feels outdated. The protocols, robotic. The sparkle, gone. But amid the doubt, one figure continues to shine. Catherine, not as a savior, but as a reminder that leadership can be gentle, human, earned. The monarchy is at its weakest moment in decades, and yet, for the first time, it feels like it could evolve, if it dares. Because evolution doesn't come from tradition. It comes from truth. And that truth, like a thread in the crown's golden fabric, leads straight back to the one woman the Queen believed could carry it all. The next chapter will not be written by power. It will be written by purpose, the guardian of legacy. She has always been the quiet force, the one who never chased attention, who never cared for tabloid drama. Princess Anne was the Queen's iron shadow, steady, practical, and unshakably loyal. But now, she's something more. She is the keeper of the plan. When the Queen passed, she left more than crowns and portraits behind. She left intentions, and Anne was the one she entrusted to carry them, not to execute power, but to protect it. That's why Anne held the letter to Catherine for so long. That's why she waited. She knew the monarchy wasn't ready for its next chapter. Not until Charles revealed his truth. Not until William faced his doubt. Not until Catherine stood in full view of the people, no longer as a duchess, but as a quiet queen in waiting. Anne understands something many don't. Survival doesn't mean resistance. It means adaptation. The institution doesn't need louder voices. It needs clearer ones. Ones that understand the world is no longer ruled by fear and hierarchy, but by trust. And Catherine, in Anne's eyes, has earned that trust. Behind palace doors, Anne now serves as the monarchy's moral compass, not dictating what must happen, but watching carefully to see who rises, who falters, who still clings to an outdated idea of power, and who's willing to carry it differently. Her respect for Charles remains, but she knows time is closing in. Her support for William is quiet, but resolute. But she also knows he may not be able to lead in the way the people now demand. So she stands behind Catherine, not pushing her forward, but making space. And that space is growing. Because as Charles weakens and the Queen's words echo louder, William is starting to break. Can William forgive? He always imagined he'd be king, not because he craved it, but because it was expected. Because that's what the son of Diana and Charles does. He carries the legacy. He smiles for the press. He raises heirs. He learns the lines. But now, William isn't sure. Since reading the letter, his father's confession, his grandmother's final wish, something inside him has shifted. He walks slower, talks less, avoids eye contact in meetings. Even his public engagements have lost their rhythm. Insiders say he's retreating inward, torn between what he's always been told to do and what he's finally starting to believe he might be meant to do. Because how does he reconcile it all? A father who admitted to choosing duty over love. A mother who begged him in her own way to break the cycle. A wife now seen by the public and by the Queen as the true heart of the monarchy. And a world that isn't waiting for him to make up his mind. The pressure isn't just about the crown anymore, it's about identity. Is William the next monarch? Or is he just the bridge? A temporary figure between what was and what's to come. And most painfully of all, can he forgive his father? Charles didn't ask for forgiveness in the letter. He only asked for understanding. But William knows forgiveness would mean accepting the pain that shaped his life. The silences, the losses, the choices that left scars. Forgiveness means letting go of the version of his family he clung to for so long, and walking into a future that looks nothing like the one he was raised to expect. And as the world watches, as the institution waits, William must now decide. Does he keep walking toward the crown? Or does he hand it to the only person who might actually know how to wear it? A legacy rewritten, everything the monarchy once stood on is shifting beneath it. The gold is still polished. The palaces still shine. But behind the gates, the real story is no longer about pageantry. It's about people. King Charles, weakened by illness and regret, has passed his truth to his son, and in doing so may have passed the final torch of his reign. He didn't ask to step down, but his letter did something else entirely. It exposed the cost of silence. It forced a question no one in the firm was ready to confront. Not just who comes next, but should they? Prince William now holds a choice. one far heavier than any crown. To continue a legacy shaped by pain and obligation, or to start a new one led by purpose and partnership. And beside him stands Catherine, not by blood, not by birthright, but by trust. Chosen by the Queen, backed by the people, honored by Anne, and quietly becoming everything the monarchy was always meant to be: calm, resilient, human. The Queen never rewrote royal law, but she didn't need to. She left something more powerful: her intention. A final message passed not to the head of the monarchy, but to its heart. And now a new kind of crown may rise, not from succession papers, but from love, from truth, from strength that doesn't need to be declared, because it's already recognized. So what comes next? A king holding on, or a queen stepping forward? One thing is clear: the story of the crown isn't ending. It's just being rewritten in Catherine's quiet, steady hand. A letter, a legacy, and a truth too big to ignore. What would you do if everything you believed about your family, your future, and your crown suddenly shifted? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell. More royal revelations are coming soon.